So in the last video, we pretty much finished the front end widening conversion on this, the wide body kit, you could say, and the air inlet. So you would think that we would start to work on the back of those, or we would start to work on the strengthening on the front clip. No. See, actually, we're going to start working on the tailgate on this truck. Yeah, it's a lot different from working on the front. But in reality, when you're working on these projects, a lot of the reason why things slow right down to a screeching halt is you don't get motivated on one piece. You lose your creativity on one piece and the whole thing sits. But you can usually work on something else on the vehicle, keep the ball rolling. So that's exactly what we're doing. I'm leaving the front end for now because we've been working on that for a couple weeks now. It's time to start working on a tailgate. And I got a pretty neat design. It follows International pretty close, but we're going to have to skin it at the end to make it look more similar, if you know what I mean. Welcome to Iowa State. All right, so we can do about this a couple ways. Here's an old Ford tailgate right here. It's actually the one to the F-150 over there. These tailgates are pretty much all sheet metal tailgates. They got all these designs stamped into them for strength. Not so much anything else. It's just strength across the flat panel. And then it's kind of like bulkheads inside, and it's all spot welded to it and then spot welded skin. We could go about that, but we're not going to. Just because of the parts I got. And by parts I got, you would think that we got tons of sheet steel, 2 sheets of 16 gauge, 4x8, and then what's left of an 18, but those sheets of 16 gauge are running boards. The 18 gauge is back fenders, back front fenders. So in reality, we got to use as little sheet metal as possible. And on this truck, we can kind of get away with it, you know what I mean? Now, this tailgate is going to be overbuilt, but we're building it with parts we got. So let me show you the stuff that I'm going to be using, and then we can get at work. Got a whole bunch of 1.5s. I think they're actually 1/4-inch wall, 1/8 wall, actually, sorry. But we got a whole bunch of those. Got a little bit of hardware here, and a couple off cuts, like this. Solid cold roll, and then some tube. So, let me show you the idea of what we got going on. All right, so I've been looking at the International tailgates for a couple days now on just how to see how they hook up. And I might be wrong on this because I don't have an International kicking around, and I don't know of anyone kicking around that I can just go and see. So, online, videos, all that stuff, I did my research the best I could, but this is kind of how I figure out it joins up. There's 2 bolts down here, 2 bolts down here, and then 2 bolts at the back, 2 bolts at the back. From what I understand, there was a plate here, 2 nubs, basically slide it in like a traditional tailgate, and then that's it. And it kind of uses a bar as its main hinge. The rest of the tailgate is built off of that. It's very tubular in structure. So one of the design freelances that we're gonna go for, one of the change on the original design, just because of what we have, the main body bottom tube that we're gonna be using is square tube on this instead of round stock. Main reason is cost and availability. I have it right here, guys, free. So that's what we're gonna be doing, but the main idea of it is we have our cold roll, and we have this guy. He goes inside, turns like that. That's our hinge. The cold roll, we're going to double up the bolts, or add an extra bolt on this one, so it's going to be 3 bolts per side holding it. This guy right here is what oh, jeez, I'm losing everything. This guy right here is what this pipe will be welded to, and then this will be bolted to the box side right here. Both sides, right? Same idea. Cold roll goes into here. Again, that's your hinge. It's not going in because there's a burr, but you understand what I mean. And then this bar, the cold roll will go inside this, and we'll weld that. So we'll weld it here. Cold roll goes in here. Hinges around. This is bolted to the truck. Now, I know what you're saying. You'll never be able to get both sides in at the same time, but we're going to copy Ford's design. It might actually be just a traditional tailgate. I got a little flack from my brother because I couldn't wrap my head around it. He says it's just a traditional tailgate. But basically, the idea is one side is like this, right? Captive inside the main joint. The other side, we're going to cut a slit on the entire thing, just big enough that this guy can slide in at an angle and kind of lock in. And basically, it's going to make it that only one end of it will hold it, and that's going to be the load bearer inside. So if this is the bottom of the truck right here, then we would cut this end and this end. That way when it goes in and it turns, it will always be in contact here, but never there. This will get welded to it, to the other plate, because I got two of these guys. And that's the only really creative difference we have. It gives us our bottom bar, and it's a bonus that it's square stock. It's going to be very easy to weld on. We're going to extend our pieces up, and then we're going to recreate basically a top bar a lot like this guy. Basically with a square stock and almost this pipe here basically halved and welded right to it. That will add our roundness, and then after that we just got to skin it, because the main structure will be there, and then we just have locks and stuff. So I'm thinking likely 3 videos for this guy, but I'm really hoping to get the main structure done today. So without dilly-dallying, it's time to start getting to work. So let's get at it right now. This is my hinge section right here. Right? It'll be like this, and then wherever this resides will be where that bar can turn up and down. Once we add the valence panel on the bottom, it will add a lot of strength to this back panel too. But we got a lot of strength because of this heavy-duty cross members that we put into the actual bed itself. So I'm not worried about flex or anything that much too much. Anyway, but what we have to do, small changes to the overall design, is the original International right here seemed to be where the hinge was. But because we raised up our floor, if I put it down here when we drop our bed, we'll have a huge hump here. And I know what you're going to say, we already have a huge hump in the middle, but that one's 45'd up, I can get things over. At least here, if I make it flush to the top, if we need to drag something in, it's all straight when the tailgate's down at 90 degrees. So what I really have to do is bring this guy right here, because what I plan on doing is another creative difference from a normal International. I have enough of these left. Basically, we'll skin the tailgate with that. So I want this to be the same height when it hinges as our outer piece here. And then we can trim to fit all that stuff down the road. So that's the idea that we're going with. So this guy right here needs to be bolted on somewhere around there, and then it will hinge right here. All this stuff will be covered by a skin panel, basically of 18 gauge or 16 gauge at the end of the day on the outside, so I'm not worried about anything like that. So the idea is to reuse this double-walled bolt hole right here. We're going to drill into 1/2 inch, and then we're going to drill 2 additional ones on this pinch weld. That will bolt onto that. I'm going to do it to both sides. I think this is a 10-inch strip. Little overkill, but again, you'll see why. It's going to be quite a heavy tailgate at the end of the day. So it'll be kind of like a hinge like that. We'll bolt him on directly. We'll get both sides, one side locked in for sure. The other side we might leave just tacked for the time being until we get that main crossbar underneath, because we want to make sure it goes up and down straight and square. So let's get working. I got to start drilling some holes. Too long for what it had to be, but you know, sometimes you gotta redneck a hole if you don't have the right drill bit. Yikes. Either way, we got it done. Works good, looks good. So now what we have to do is I'm gonna measure out, well, first I'm actually gonna weld one of these onto my end, figure out exactly where I need it to be. Then we're gonna measure out our tube and weld in our cold roll chunks for the hinge piece. We also got to cut one of these. So it's going to be a little bit of finagling, but I think we're going to be able to do it just fine. So let's get at that right now. What I'll do is I'll tack weld those guys here, these guys, set it up, make sure it rolls and does everything I want it to do, square, all that good stuff. And if it all checks out, what I can do is unbolt these, weld those solid, or weld those kind kind of solid first. Just help take the warp down a little bit. Weld that guy up solid, and then we can at least get our main bar hinge piece done. All right, so small design change halfway through. I was making it so then you could slide one end in, be all nice and hunky-dory. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was coming out a little bit too complex. I should have basically reversed what I did and had the big end tailgate side, small end there. But I had small end tailgate side, big end there. Kind of ended up screwing around some hole. It made things a lot harder than they should have been. So, because this bolts on anyway, when you take off the tailgate, you just have to unbolt this piece. Bingo, bango, unbolt that, take it right off. Not a big deal. But that's our hinge mechanism. Should be plenty strong, especially when we add that bottom support in, but it's also supported by this big old guy right here. I can put my weight on it, no issues. No issues like that. It's still not finish welded, but it's finish welded enough that we can actually start to build the tailgate up. So what I'm going to do now is basically build this. It's going to go straight up to there, build that straight up to there, and then we can add our crossbar, and then we're going to basically butcher up a pipe and weld that to the crossbar. So a little bit of work, but let's see if we can get that skeleton up. Fellas, we're gonna have to call it a day just here on this video and catch up on another one. Ran out of welding wire, so we're pretty much dead in the water. But that's what we got so far. A lot of it's not finished welded yet, but the main superstructure of the gate is kind of there. Now, we're trying to keep to the international theme, so I got some ideas that are going to be implemented into this structure once it's all welded up. And we also got another 2 braces that we're going to be putting in the middle just for a little bit of added strength. But yeah, that's how it's going, guys. Not too shabby at all. I'll catch you guys in the next video, likely on this tailgate. I'm quite eager to see this thing through. I'll see you guys.